Welcome to Georgetown University's McDonough School of Business. My name is Luke Wathieu. I'm the Deputy Dean. Today we have the great pleasure of welcoming Briana Scurry, a world-renowned goalkeeper, as part of the Stanton Distinguished Leader Series. Many of you may recall Miss Scurry stopping a penalty at the World Cup in '99. One of the biggest highlights of her career, in which she also gathered 2 gold Olympic medals, which are here for us to watch. And she also has 71 shutouts. I've been told that you would all understand what it is. And 173 international appearances. Since retiring, Miss Scurry has been involved in concussion awareness advocacy. And she has done that with a lot of passion. And passion, as we will see, is great characteristics of her. Throughout her career, she has met success and adversity. And that has made her aware and develop a deep understanding of the traits you need to have to be a good leader. And the bet we make tonight is that to be a leader on the soccer field is just the same as being a leader in business or in life, and that there is so much to learn from Miss Scurry. So she's an inspiration, and we are so happy to have her with us tonight. Let's welcome her with a round of applause.
Good evening. How is everyone? Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming. It's an honor for me to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited about this speech tonight because I really feel that I have something to share, and I'm very grateful that all of you have come today to hear me share it. So here we go. So thank you very much for your warm reception. I am honored, like I said, to be here in front of this esteemed group. In business, they say that the higher up the ladder you go, the more sedentary you become. When you've reached the top, everyone else is running around to try to please you. By that measure, I've reached the highest echelons of the soccer world. As a goalkeeper in high school, college, at the national, international, and professional levels, I've seen forwards, midfielders, and fullbacks run miles in a typical game. All the while, I'm more or less confined to a big box. But what you may see on TV or in a stadium is far from reality. A goalkeeper works as hard as any player on the field, and the best goalkeepers are the leaders of their teams, because we can see the whole field. As goalkeepers, we see the big picture. A goalkeeper develops and implements many leadership skills, and I'm here to share some of the lessons, some of the crucial lessons I've learned with you so that all of you can take those lessons back to your office, your school, your home team, or any organization you're a part of and become a respected leader. Before I go into these lessons, however, let me give you some of the highlights of my life. I started playing soccer at 12 years old. Are there anyone in here who's played soccer? Raise your hand. Have any of you started after 12 years old? One. Yay. See, so now the trend has definitely changed. Raise your hand if you were 6 years old when you started. 7? 8? 9? All right. All right, so we have a lot of soccer fans and soccer players in the room. That's fantastic. So like I said, I started when I was 12 years old, and going through junior high school and high school, I played with great passion, and over that time, I earned 70 college recruitment letters, most of them offering scholarships. I chose UMass Amherst and started 65 games there in goal. Of those 65 games, 37 were shutouts and yielded just more than a half a goal per game. I had a fantastic time there at UMass, and I earned many individual and team awards. From there, I was invited into the U.S. national team. I was a goalkeeper that won Olympic gold medals in 1996, which is the green one up there you'll see, and 2004 in the Athens Games, and that was the centennial for that games. The team also won the 1999 World Cup. I don't know if any of you remember that game. Any of you parents? You remember the game, right? That was the game when I saved that penalty kick from China. And all of you, I'm sure, remember Brandi Chastain scoring that winning PK and ripping her shirt off and waving it around. And that was the memory that was plastered in all of our minds and all the minds of everybody in this country as one of the greatest iconic moments of sports ever to happen. From 2001 to 2003, I played professionally for the Atlanta Beat of the WUSA. I also had a brief run in the WPS, which was a successor league to the WUSA. After I had that run at the WPS in 2009 and 2010, I retired shortly after that with an injury, but more on that later. So that is the Wikipedia version of my life. But that masks a lot of the difficult and joyous times and many lessons that I learned, often painful lessons learned. I'm here today to share the things that you may or may not know about me, the things that have gotten me to the point where I am now. So that I want to share these things with you so that you can take them from here and apply them to any endeavor that you undertake in your futures. Lesson number 1. Always have a vision. There is a good reason why companies have vision statements. It gives them something to strive for, a definition of future success, so they don't lose focus. Every person in this room should have some sort of vision statement for their lives as well. I encourage you all to write that vision statement down, especially you young ones in here. And as you go through your life, refine that vision statement as you develop personally and professionally. My vision statement started when I was 7 years old, when I told my first grade teacher, Miss Swanson, that I wanted to be an Olympian. Other kids wanted to be teachers, firefighters, doctors, all noble pursuits, absolutely noble. But in most cases, those 7-year-old, 8-year-old kids lost interest, their passion for being firefighters faded, and their priorities changed, or they got distracted. My vision grew stronger, however, and in the 3rd grade, I made a sign that said, "I have a dream." 1996 Atlanta Olympic Games. Maybe that "I have a dream" sign doesn't rise to the same vision as that other guy who actually said I had a dream, but we all have our own paths. My original vision was channeled into soccer, but more specifically into goalkeeping, but that was always my guiding light. I stuck to that vision, and I can still remember that little sign that I wrote, even though it's been pulled down since then because a family member moved into my room. In my mind's eye, I can still see myself as that little girl writing that note on that sign and the softness of that paper under my fingertips. The more senses that you can engage in your vision, the more real it will become. If you can think of a vision that you feel, that you can taste, touch, literally smell, and hear, that vision will stay with you. I keep that piece of paper that I wrote that on with me this very day. Now, that's not to say that if you're young, that your career paths may not change, and then that you're not driven. The lesson I am sharing with you now is that you should know what you want, write it down, and start working towards it. Lesson number 2, Set both achievable and reachable goals. Setting short-term realistic goals sets you down the path that you want to go down. Short-term goals are absolutely essential. Don't let anyone ever say that that's not important. I absolutely agree with that. However, you will never truly excel unless you have an incredible goals, unless you have what I call BHAG goals, B-H-A-G, big, hairy, audacious goals. So for the short term, I made reachable goals for myself. Ironically, my goals were all about preventing other people from scoring goals. My goals were things like working out harder, stopping this shot, winning this game, making the national team, making the Olympic team, trying to get to the World Cup and making that team, and so on. But to this very day, what always pushed me back then, and I always will know this, is that I wanted my big, hairy, audacious goal was to get on the podium. And from year 7 till then, it never changed. I encourage you to have a BHAG goal as well, to reach for whatever you feel is just beyond your fingertips to achieve and make that something that is important to you in your life. But be sure that that thing that you choose as your goal is something that energizes you, is something that is aligned with what your values are. Because if it is not, it'll be very, very difficult to achieve it, and you will be left out in the cold, and you may eventually fail. Lesson number 3, model your expectations, otherwise known as leading by example. Good leaders lead by example, not by mere words. I imagine that you all, or most of you that do work with mostly bright, motivated, and high-achieving people. Always assume your classmates, your teammates, your comrades at work are noble in their intent, and that they're trying to do the best job for themselves, and for you, and for the organization you're a part of. Always be optimistic and think the best of them, unless and until they prove otherwise. In a quarterfinal game that we played in 1999 World Cup against Germany, I went to the outside of the goal to receive a pass back from Briana Chastain. That's the normal, typical method of operation, how we do it on the national team. When you do a pass back, you pass it to the outside of the goal. But unfortunately, this time, in front of 65,000 people and the President of the United States, Brandy didn't look up to see where I was standing, and she passed that ball back to where she thought I was, and I wasn't there. The ball agonizingly, slowly rolled into our own goal, right in front of everyone. Brandy and I both felt terrible. We were stunned, along as what everybody else was stunned. But we never, ever, to this very day, it was 15 years ago when this happened, blamed each other. We were leaders, and leaders don't blame their teammates. Sure enough, some of you probably know the ending of that game. But do you recall who scored the goal? Sure enough, Briana Chastain, in the second half of that game, scored a goal on the other team's net this time, and we won 3-2. Even after that major mistake that was made by both of us, we trusted in each other, and we modeled the correct behavior. We didn't get upset, we didn't scream, we didn't stomp our feet and pout. We knew, as did our teammates, that we would each take responsibility and act like professionals. But it took many months of training, practicing, spending time and working out to get to the point where we both believed and we had the trust and faith in each other. That outcome could have been completely different had I or Brandy gotten upset and allowed ourselves to get outside of what we called the creed of our team. We may have lost that game had we responded in a different way. We expected the highest of each other. And sure enough, that's exactly what we got. However, I am realistic, and there will be obstacles in your way. No matter how hard we all try, there are times when we may lose focus and take our eye off the ball. When a goalkeeper takes her eye off the ball, it's an essentially big problem. I wasn't modeling expectations in 2000 Olympic Games when I arrived at training camp 20 pounds overweight. I knew that I might be in big trouble, and sure enough, the new coach at that time put me on the bench. I watched as my teammates lost the gold medal. It was excruciatingly painful to watch. I didn't play a single minute of that Olympic Games. I'll never forget the feeling of having that silver medal put around my neck. It felt like a millstone, a dead weight. But in reality, I was the one that was the dead weight to the team. I hadn't taken responsibility, I hadn't contributed, and I had let myself and my teammates down that year. At first, when my coach benched me, I was angry. I was upset. I thought to myself, how could she possibly not start me? Then something happened, something that changed my life. I got a photo. I received a photo of myself that someone wanted me to sign for them. It showed me in my quote-unquote post-World Cup glory, looking bloated and completely out of shape. The attention of the media after the '99 World Cup had gotten not only to my head, but into my belly as well. I had let myself down, my team down, and at that moment, I knew I had to change everything. I changed how I ate, how I trained, how I interacted, how I felt about the team and my place in it. I changed my heart. I changed my faith and in myself. If you model true heart, faith, and effort with your colleagues, your teammates, your partners, your friends, they will embrace you and run through walls for you, or at least up and down a soccer pitch for you. I worked my way back after that 2000 Games to become the starter once again for the national team, and I blew the doors off. After the 2003 World Cup, where we took third place, the very next Olympic Games, which is 2004, we won gold medal. I had to first model expectations for both myself and the team. Lesson number 4, embrace failure. Often failure is only a state of mind, and it is almost always temporary. But no one ever did anything great without screwing up in a huge way, or as I call it, failing spectacularly. Steve Jobs, I'm sure you've heard of him. Before the iPhone and the iPad, he was kicked out of Apple. Thomas Edison, it took him 1,000 attempts to create the light bulb. Oprah Winfrey, fired from multiple TV jobs before she made it big. J.K. Rowling, depressed, divorced, broke, and writing a book in a coffee shop with her little kid bouncing on her knee. All of these people knew that in order to win big, they had to go big and risk it all. Throughout my playing days, I've had awful practices, games, and training camps, but that's because I always kept pushing, always trying something new, willing to risk it, willing to try a different approach. When I tried out for the U.S. national team in 1993, and my first training camp was absolutely horrible. I couldn't stop a beach ball that week. They scored goals on my left, to my right, over my head, between my legs, off my fingertips. If they could have burrowed the ball underneath the ground and put it behind me, they would have. That's how bad I was. I was what I called Swiss cheese that week. But I had developed a mindset at that point. I had trained and I had developed relationships, and I knew that I had to embrace what seemed like a disaster on its face at that training camp in order to help me improve. So instead of looking at it as a failure, I embraced it as a lesson. Which brings me to the final lesson. Lesson number 5, do not be too hard on yourself. Are you listening? Did you hear what I said? Do not be too hard on yourself. As it turned out, that training camp that I perceived as being absolute disaster hadn't been a disaster at all. There were many, and I mean many, at least 1,000 goals I counted, that had gone by me. But what I had not been aware of is the other characteristics that my future coaches and teammates saw that I didn't see at the time. My athleticism, my resolve, my perseverance, my leadership. It turns out that during that time, I had gone from number 5 on the goalkeeper depth chart that camp to number 1 in 5 months. That is a true indication and story to let you know that if you work hard and you have the right mindset, understand that sometimes the judgment is up to someone else. Factors that you aren't aware of might be at play. So if you think you're having a bad day, don't be too hard on yourself. These 5 lessons transcend sports and business, and now I'm going to pull them all together for you and share with you a challenge that I am facing right now. In 2010, as I had mentioned earlier, I was playing professionally for the Washington Freedom of the WPS when my head collided with another opposing teammate's knee who was trying to score on me. I won't lecture you on what happens when someone's knee runs into your head and neck area at high speeds, or bore you with the subsequent diagnoses, misdiagnoses, intense migraine headaches, sleeping problems, short-term memory challenges, and feelings of hopelessness and despair of not being Briana Scurry anymore. But what I will tell you is how I'm using the 5 lessons I just shared with you to overcome my significant brain injury that I suffered 4 years ago. Over the past several years, I've followed my own advice. I've set a vision, a dual vision, one for myself to get back to who I was and even better, and one for others like you to be an inspiration in my next 40 years as I was in my first 40. Second, I've set many hourly, daily, weekly, and monthly goals of recovery and a long-term goal of full recovery and then some. I have become an advocate for maintaining brain health for athletes, raising awareness for youth sports safety, and getting tested for concussions and the like. I've lived by one of my favorite quotes of all time, to inspire and create no matter what I'm doing. My ultimate goal behind my entire soccer career was to inspire and create, and we did that. Boy, did we do that. This injury that I've suffered 4 years ago is just an obstacle, like so many others I've talked to you about in my journey, and I constantly remind myself that I could recover, and I found inspiration in everything I did. Third, I've been modeling my expectations. It would have been easy for me to wallow in the self-pity and misery that I found myself in and how far I had fallen from Briana Scurry to someone with a TBI. I was no longer the Briana Scurry, a World Cup hero, multiple gold medalist, cover girl for Time magazine with Brandy, Mia, Michelle, and all my teammates. The woman who played in front of 90,000 people, in front of 40 million on TV, and saving that third penalty kick in that China game. I had been a hero to young girls and boys. Everyone had wanted a photo of me, a signature, a soundbite, a TV spot. Now, I was yesterday's news, no, last generation's news actually, an afterthought in today's nonstop news cycle. I was depressed. I wasn't sleeping, not able to even recall what I had for breakfast. But I told myself that I wanted to be the person I want to be, not someone who lived off their past glories. Model who you want to be, and it will come. I promise. It has for me. Fourth, I embraced failure. And oh Lord, was it difficult. Every day I would challenge myself to remember a bit more, to try to improve my moods, to sleep a little better. And there have been setbacks, and there always will be. No matter what you achieve or try to achieve, success is not a straight line. But I've always remembered that failure is just another opportunity to succeed. And finally, don't be too hard on yourself. That has been my best and probably the hardest lesson. All things take time. And always remember, you're not alone. Enjoy your life. Enjoy each day. Rely on your friends and family and do what you love to do. Look at the scenery and take a break. Smell the roses, as they say. And then stand up, dust yourself off, and get going. And be who it is you want to be. You will be a leader. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to open it for questions, and if you have a question, thank you. If you have a question, please go to either of the two microphones that are in the middle of the aisleway there and ask away. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
My name's Christina Griffin.
Hello, pleasure.
I'd like to know, what do you see for like the next 5 years?
Fantastic question. What do I see for the next 5 years? I see myself doing more public speaking on the national speaker circuit. This is something I really enjoy doing. And like I'd mentioned, in a way that I want to share my story and try to inspire others. Also, there's a small possibility that I might be doing some coaching in the next 5 years as well. I feel like there's many opportunities for that as well, and we'll see. We'll see, but I'm very optimistic about it, and I think I'm going to continue to do the public speaking and share my story and my journey until I'm 80. I will always do that, because it's very important to me, and it's something that I feel there's a great need for. Great question. Hi.
Hi there. My name is Kathy. As you can probably tell from my gear, I'm a big soccer fan.
I see that. England, right?
Yes.
Very nice.
And DC United.
Very
and
cool.
I also saw you when you were with the Spirit, so
Yes.
I'm glad that you are still around in the area.
Thank you.
My question for you is, I watched the U.S. women's national team beat up on Mexico a few days ago.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if you think that this trend will continue, where the U.S. will continue to be the dominant team, or do you see the play leveling off now that with the new women's soccer league, that there's supposed to be a training ground, so to speak, for the Mexican and other nationals?
I definitely think the trend is going to be to have more equality, more parity. Just as I had mentioned before, we had either won Olympic Games or were in the top three. And it wasn't until recently that Japan won the last Women's World Cup in 2011. They were obviously greatly inspired by the tsunami that had occurred that same year.
Yes.
But I think the quality is going up, and the leagues are helping with that. You know, the fact that we have this great league here now, and the Mexican Federation, the Canadian Federation, and the U.S. Soccer Federation all sponsor their players, and so therefore they all play in the league. I think that will raise the level. And of course, in Europe, you know, the Germanys and the Norways of the world are always going to be very good teams, and also with Brazil. So I think it's a toss-up for this coming World Cup as to who's going to be in the final, and also for the Olympics as well. So I think the level is definitely coming up.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Yes, over there.
Hi, this is kind of
Hi.
a two-part question regarding leadership in general.
Of course.
The first regarding the 2007 World Cup situation with Hope Solo.
Yes.
If you could speak about how you have advice for tackling situations like that using your leadership skills.
Yes.
And then the second half, which kind of gears off, is what leadership you think is necessary to grow the National Women's Soccer League currently.
Absolutely, yes. 2007 was a very difficult year for me. I had stepped away from the game in 2006 and then returned, and unfortunately lost my position to Hope Solo, who played for the team and started and played the majority of games, and we went into the World Cup in 2007 that year, and she played the first several games, but then Coach made a decision that he wanted to play me, and unfortunately we didn't win that game, but it became a big, huge media storm. And the way we handled that, and the way I handled and my teammates handled it, is we understood that she had, her feelings hurt, and she had a right to give her opinion. But we wanted to make sure that we always wanted to put our best foot forward and be the role models that we have always aspired to be. And sometimes things don't always go your way, and sometimes you don't get the result that you're going for, and you have to be professional and patient about that. And so we handled that situation, I feel, very well as a team. It was a very difficult situation to deal with, and certainly, we could have handled it a different way, but I feel we kept our integrity as a team in dealing with that situation, and sure enough, the team actually won the gold medal the year after. What was the second part?
What leadership you think is necessary to grow the National Women's Soccer League at this point?
I think the teams should just continue, and the league itself should continue to be in the public eye and engaging the fans and the communities. I think one of the things that's really important for women's soccer is for people to get to know the players. I mean, there's so much to offer there. There's such diversity on every team that just about every family in that community can relate to someone on that team. And so I think right now with teams, especially like teams in Portland and Seattle, they've really done well connecting with their fans. And I think other teams in other cities can take note of that and continue to just try to engage. And I also feel like if a person goes to a game, they usually tend to come back. And the rate is high for approval for someone who sees a game. So I feel like the league just needs to continue to reach out and try to inspire other people to come and become fans.
Do you have a favorite NWSL team? Or one that you support the most?
The Spirit. Washington Spirit. Go team, go.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you for your questions. Yes.
Hello, my name is Julian. I have two questions.
Yes.
Why did the women's national team hate the Norwegian team so much during the late 1990s and early 2000s?
Yeah. Okay.
And then two, how do you come back from such a big loss when you do lose like a championship or something like that? Just in general, a big life failure. Right.
The first question is a great question. That rivalry is similar to, say, a football rivalry like in college. And so the women's national team for the USA and the Norwegian national team were the two teams that rose up at the same time. So they usually played each other in the finals of everything back then. And so we had a really difficult time winning against them. They were the one team that had a winning record against us for the longest time. And then we started to beat them, and then they haven't beaten us in like 10 years now. And so there was very passionate dislike for them.
Yeah, I remember the nickname you guys gave them in the documentary Dare to Dream.
Yeah, it was... Yeah, it was Viking something, right? Yeah. That's in the past now. But yeah, we were very passionate about playing against them, and it was always a fantastic game. So, and the second question was?
How do you overcome such a big failure when
Yes.
you do lose a big game or just a big thing in life?
Right. If you keep your intention and your goal in front of you, that actually pulls you towards it. So for us, the intention on the day was to win the game and execute. But we wouldn't win every game, just like a goalkeeper doesn't save every goal. But you really can't let that bury you. And so in the cycles, which is a World Cup first and then an Olympics for us, if we lost one of the games in the cycle, like if we lost the World Cup game, we would vow to, redeem ourselves and give it our all to win that next tournament cycle. And it was just part of the play. We knew we couldn't win every game, but we weren't going to let ourselves be completely buried and lose our opportunity that was coming up because we were wallowing in our self-pity of what just occurred. So we had a really strong sense of character and a great drive in knowing that we could change what had just happened. So we took the lesson from a loss and used that and made fire in our bellies from that to win. And just about every time we would win the next tournament.
Thank you.
You bet.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Jordan. I'm an MBA student. First
Jordan,
off, just
pleasure.
thank you for coming here.
Thank you.
Yeah, sharing
Thank
your story.
Thank you for having me.
I played soccer since 4 years old.
Awesome.
And you might know, all coaches don't train the same way,
Yes.
including the way you can remain durable and flexible. So it's like you're doing for preventative measures to remain healthy.
Yes.
How do you think in today's society where yoga is a very popular movement, that's going to affect soccer training so people or soccer players can remain healthy as well?
That's a good question. It's a fine line, right? For example, there's a lot of talk now about whether certain sports are healthy to be played because of the long-term ramifications. For example, football, professional football.
Sure.
Smashing into each other 50 times a day, is that a good idea? It's a tough balance, and different people have different opinions about it. But I think every individual and every individual team and every individual coach will have a different philosophy. But I think the important thing is to just be open-minded about things that you go through and about different philosophies, and to be willing to try and see if something fits. And if it doesn't fit, then maybe find something else.
Thank you.
You bet. Yes.
Hi, thanks for coming. I'm a freshman here.
Thank you.
I have two questions too. The first one is, what do you think is the most important thing that it takes to become a champion?
I think the most important thing is desire. And the second most important thing, and it's a close second, is having fun. Desire is an interesting thing because it'll get you through stuff when it gets complicated. And I think a great example I always use is walking. So when all of us were younger, our parents decided we will walk. Even though we fell down, tripped over stuff, you get back up. You keep trying to walk until you learned how. Same with riding a bike. You keep getting back on that bike until you learn how to ride it. And I think what happens a lot of times when we get older is we realize when something gets difficult, a lot of times people throw their hands in the air and they're like, I don't want to do this anymore. But if you have that desire and passion and understand that obstacles are inevitable, then I think that's the one thing that will help you succeed and drive you forward.
And second question is, you mentioned that you lost like 20 pounds, and nowadays people find one of the most difficult things to take control is our physical body. And
Yes.
do you have any advice on that?
Oh, I could write a book on my advice about that. I've had weight issues and challenges for a long time, since 2000. And the most important thing that I've realized over the years is consistency. So, for example, when it comes to being physically fit, it's not necessarily what you're doing, whether it's swimming or running or riding a bike or yoga or, CrossFit, whatever it is you're doing. The key is consistency. So if you decide that you want to be more physically fit, you have to do two things. You have to be consistent and you have to schedule it. So even if it's a matter of you losing an hour of sleep because you have to go to the gym at 6 a.m. and then get to class at 7:30, then if that's something that you're passionate about and something that you want, then do that. Because being healthy will affect everything in your life in a good way. And so it's a worthy pursuit to try to find out what it is that you enjoy doing and being consistent at it and schedule it.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Why did you prefer goalie over the other positions on the field?
Well, that was actually a choice that was given to me initially. I was the only girl on a boys' team when I first played, and they thought that was a safe place for me. And we all know that that is the complete opposite. Goalkeeping is like the dangerous place to be, right? People running at you, you're trying to stop things that are going really fast and all that stuff. And then actually the next year I chose to continue it because I felt that I could control the game from there because I can stop the other team from winning. I may not be able to make my team win, but I can stop the other team from winning, and I really like that. And it was fun for me.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
You said you wrote your vision when you were 7 years old,
Yes.
but you started soccer when you were 12.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on how that happened?
I'm so glad you caught that. I'm so glad she caught that because you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Because I wrote that because I wanted to be on the podium, but I had no idea how.
Right.
And the how came later.
Right.
Right? So I knew as 7 and 9 and 15 that I was going to be on the podium. Women's soccer actually wasn't even an Olympic sport until 1996. That was the first time women's soccer was in the Olympic Games.
Visions.
Yes. How could a 7-year-old know such things? All I knew is I saw Miracle on Ice 1980 Olympics. Anybody see that? That hockey team? And I knew two things. I wanted to be on that podium and I wanted to be a goalie of something. It didn't matter what. I was going to be a goalie in something. And then the soccer thing just kind of worked out. I'm glad you caught that, though, because it really, the how isn't as important as the why.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, thank you.
You're welcome. Nice catch. Yes. Hi.
I know a lot of current and former soccer players are discussing the turf wars, so to speak, for the upcoming Women's World Cup.
Yes.
So I just wanted to know your opinion, whether it be for the integrity of the sport or health reasons or whatever.
Well, in 2010, when I got my concussion, that was a turf field. In 2009, the year before, I hurt my knee on a turf field. Up until that point, I had never had any significant injury that was more than 3 days. All those other times on grass fields. So I have a actual history of disdain for turf for obvious reasons, like I just mentioned, but it's just, I don't like it. It's just not healthy. There's a lot of information, like you said, about injuries that occur on that surface that do not occur on grass. And the rate is a lot higher. And it's not the real game. And it's something, hopefully, that will be resolved, and the girls will be able to play on the grass, I hope. Absolutely.
Thank you.
You bet. Yes?
Hey, so right now, discussion about TBIs
Yes.
and youth athletes is huge, and there's been a lot of possible strategies or regulations thrown about.
Yes.
What's your perspective on it, and are there certain regulations or restrictions you would like to see put in place or not put in place to preserve people's safety as well as the integrity of the game?
Yes, that's a great question. There's several things. I am for awareness and education. So I love the game of soccer. Absolutely love it. Do I think 14-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 12-year-olds need to be heading the ball at practice every day and in games? Maybe not. Because studies and research shows that there's a lot of development going on during those ages, and heading the ball frequently is maybe not a good idea. So I'm for the understanding, the education, and awareness aspect of it. In terms of what can be done with regulation and rules, there's a lot being done now, thank goodness. I actually testified before Congress a few months ago about this and how soccer as a sport was behind football in the NHL, where as football and the NHL have done some major shifting and poured money into their youth programs to teach, for example, the proper way to tackle. And in hockey, to, no slamming up against the board. So they've actually made tweaks and changes to how they go about teaching young kids how to play the sport. And I think soccer is behind on that. And so I'd like to see U.S. Soccer, U.S. Soccer Foundation, and other national organizations take the lead on that for soccer. And then, of course, we had the World Cup just a few months ago, and the two teams in the final, Argentina and Germany, both had a major head injury occur in that final or the game before. And, knocked out. The guys were knocked out. And they should never have been given the choice or asked the question, do you want to play? What are they going to say? Of course they're going to say yes, but professionals, officials, doctors need to make those decisions. And so I think at the international level, FIFA can institute two things in particular. One, have a head injury substitution that doesn't affect the other three substitutions that they have. And two, follow their own protocol. Because in that World Cup, take the decision out of the hand of the player. They're the last person that should be asked if they want to play. Yeah. Because, of course, they're always going to say yes. Yeah. So, but great questions.
Thanks so
you.
much.
You bet. Hi.
Hello, Issa Thompson. I'm part of the Georgetown Public Relations Program.
Mm-hmm.
So given the state, and so this is more of an advice type of question. So given the state of our world, right, we have a lot of wars happening in the moment, right? A lot of people that are unfortunately dying for causes. I've been trying to, and as a veteran myself, I've been trying to figure out, what's a good way to bring our world together. And I kind of, I'm thinking soccer. I just, I was thinking soccer is a great way to do it because the World Cup, the ball is around. You see all these balls with the flag.
Right.
Do you think that the soccer league would actually promote something like, soccer for world peace, or kind of like sponsor sending soccer balls to all of these countries as a way of bringing unity?
I think that's a fantastic idea. I do know that there are organizations that are using soccer as a vehicle for peace, because outside the United States, that's the biggest sport by far of any other sport that this world plays. And wars have stopped, during World Cups and what have you. And so I actually completely agree, and I think that's a fantastic idea. And, I would say keep asking until you find someone that's willing to go ahead and do that, and I completely agree with that. I think soccer could become a vehicle for peace. Absolutely.
And do you have any kind of advice on where I should get started, like emailing a certain area within the soccer league, or?
I'm trying to think of one that I had in my mind.
There's an initiative with the State Department.
I was going to say the State Department. Thank you. Yes, the State Department.
I've actually met the gentleman that's heading that with children, so I can definitely reach out to them as well.
Yes.
From a woman's perspective, are there any other ones, or the State Department, I guess?
I think State Department is the best one because I think I know the gentleman you're referring to. I can't remember his name, but it's an undertaking.
Yep.
Obviously, there's a lot to go through to go from concept to actual realizing you're doing it. And so I think the State Department is a great place to start, though. But yeah, that's somebody will help you.
Awesome. So I will definitely reach out to him. Thank you. And so I had another question too.
Of course.
And this is more about being a woman on the field and athletics. As we know, a lot of women don't get a lot of prime time on television. Women's sports are not as popular. How have you dealt with that? Or have you been able to have this, lethal focus that it doesn't bother you at all?
Well, I think my perspective is a little bit different because I think of it as a long-term undertaking. For example, now it's, NFL, NBA, NHL are big. There was a time when football wasn't the big show it is now. And soccer in this country is still in its infancy, I feel. And so the MLS league has only been around, I think, maybe 17, 18 years now, whereas the NFL and other leagues have been around 60, 70, 100 years. So I think it's getting there, and our women, as we continue to forge new ground, we have come a very long way. I mean, we haven't had a World Cup here in the U.S. since 1999, but the fact that we were able to fill football stadiums says a lot about the potential of women's sports here, in particular soccer. And I think that moving forward, there's been great strides made, but people have to continue to push the ball forward and look at it in a more long-term type of view. For example, one great example I think is tennis. It wasn't until just the last 5 years where women's tennis, the purses were the same as the men's purses, like, you know, $750,000 for the U.S. Open. And it took a long time for the women to fight to get the same amount of money. But they do now. And somebody has to take up that fight. And so these things take time.
Okay, well, thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you. Hi.
Hi. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
My name's Abigail, and I've been following your story with your recovery. I suffered a concussion in 2010 and have been dealing with seeing multiple practitioners, and I'm under a lot of care. I've had the same diagnosis as you, and I just am wondering how, you know, you mentioned you need to kind of be able to just accept yourself and say it's okay and give yourself a break on things, and I'm wondering how you have found to, first of all, still set and achieve goals for yourself when they're different from what you were doing before the injury, and also how you just managed to keep going knowing that the life you thought you had is so different.
Well, that's a great question, because for me, my greatest asset was always my mental toughness and my ability to focus on something and run after that goal. And what was not working anymore was my mind. So the thing I used to do all these things was what was broken. It took a lot. Part of what got me out of my depression and anxiety was I had to keep remembering that I am capable of doing amazing things, even though at that time I didn't feel like I was capable anymore. You know, one of the stories I told someone was, you know, I see that girl, Briana Scurry, who made that penalty kick save. But there was a time that I didn't feel like that could have been me. And I'm like, was that me? I'm like, I did that. That was me. But I don't feel in any way that I could do that again. But it took time. I finally found the right doctor. And that's what changed everything for me, is I just continued to reach and try different doctors until I found someone who actually did know what was wrong. And as soon as I found my new doctor a year and a half ago, I've been on the mend ever since.
Dr. Duchek?
Yes, Dr. Duchek
Okay,
and Dr. Crutchfield.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm seeing them, so.
Oh, great.
Yay.
Good. Yay. Very good. That's a start. If they can't help you, they'll find someone who can.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And then, but more career-wise, I guess, how do I keep going on this stuff? I don't know, trying to keep doing what I want to do when I physically feel terrible and like I mentally can't even, I'm not even capable of what I used to be.
I understand. Part of the reason why I talk about my experience with my concussion is that it's therapeutic for me to do so. And I had to somehow change this horrible thing that happened to me and somehow figure out how to make it a good thing. Because if I stayed in that pain and agony and defeat, it was going to drag me down, and I was never going to get out of that hole. So I was like, how do I change this into a positive thing? So one of the things that I might recommend to you would be to try to find maybe a support group or you know, even online or physically, you know, go to a support group with TBI survivors. So many hospitals in this area can help you with that, and just get with someone and talk about it. I mean, that in and of itself is part of it. And then once you start seeing incremental, like, progress, and hopefully you will with Dr. Duchek and Crutchfield, you know, they can steer you in the right direction. And then you can sit down and figure out, okay, I've done some amazing things in my life. What can I still do? What am I still capable of doing? And you'd be surprised, because a year and a half ago, there's no way I'd be standing up here. Yeah. No way. And here I am. So it can happen. So just keep after it, and tell Dr. Crutchfield and Dr. Duchek to give you the best. And I said so.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Good luck to you.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Well,
Yeah.
first of all, thank you so much for speaking, for being with us today.
Thank
My
you.
name's Nina. I'm a master's student here. I grew
Fantastic.
up in a soccer family. I was a huge player growing up, and you and your teammates were complete. You were my heroes.
Thank you.
A great inspiration for me, and you've continued to inspire me with your hearing more about your story today.
Thank you.
One issue I sometimes faced growing up playing soccer for many, many years was that you didn't always really like your coach. So I was wondering kind of what your experiences were working under coaches that maybe did not appreciate your abilities or that you just really didn't mesh with, particularly as you get to the higher level and you don't really have a choice.
Right. That is a great question, because part of the reason why it's only a handful of players that have longevity on the national team is because they're able to cope with that. I mean, because our turnover for coaches is every 4 or 5 years, a new coach. And then with a new coach comes new ideas, and, they have a certain player that they want, and it may not be the player that you are and whatnot. So I think the thing is, though, is to focus on what you can control. Like I said earlier, don't be too hard on yourself, and you may not be thinking of the thing that is going to get you where you want to go, but it might be working for you anyway. So what you should focus on is what you can control. You can control your fitness. You can control your training. You can control, whether you practice outside of the team or not. And you can control your work rate. So focus on that, and then eventually over time, that coach will see the qualities in you that they want to have on their team. That is one of the biggest secrets that I think, the Christine Lillys, Julie Foudy's, myself, and the Brandys had was, if we were as fit as we could be, if we worked as hard as we could, if we just focused on the stuff that we could control and not worry about the choices that a coach makes or they want to play a different system, inevitably, we got picked by every coach. And at some point, that coach's mind will change. And once they realize that you're, an integral part of the team. And those are the things you need to do, just focus on what you can control. Because you can't control their decision.
Yeah.
Right?
And one more quick question, sorry to keep you. I am having personally a hard time balancing between kind of two pieces of your advice, or kind of two, general traits in life. I am a very driven person, and so the desire is always there, but sometimes have a harder time with the latter part of your advice, which is don't be too hard on yourself. So I was kind of wondering how you decide, or how you kind of know where to draw the line in terms of pushing yourself when you have a goal and you have a desire and you have the drive, and in terms of, holding back and saying, and I can't overdo this, with training or with other things in life, because overtraining has been an issue for me, but then it's also like perfectionist tendencies kind of all around. So I don't know.
It's a great question. It's complicated. It's a very fine balance. What I have done over the years is, I go and go and go, and then I take a look, and I keep my head down, and I'm pushing with that desire, and then I take a step back and see, okay, is this getting me where I want to be? And if the answer is no, that's where the don't be too hard on yourself comes in. And then if you have to do a tweak to what it is you're doing currently, if it's not getting you where you want to go, or it's getting you veering off a little bit, then you have to make an adjustment. But you just have to know in your heart that that's part of my adjustment that I'm going to have to make. Because if you have the dream out there, your path might be like this to get to it. And this is the part where if you're driven just this one way, then you're not going to make it. And it seems like it's like a contradiction, because you're going to have to not be too hard on yourself, and you might have to course adjust. And that's where the balance comes in. So you drive until you realize that maybe I'm not going where I want to go. That's when the don't be too hard on yourself comes in. So it's kind of like a one and then the other. Because if you are so driven, you're not liking where you're at, and you're not understanding it, and you're getting angry about it and frustrated about it, that's the wrong kind of energy. And then that's not helping.
Yeah.
So that's where the don't be too hard on yourself comes in. Okay. Are you feeling me?
Yeah.
I think you are. Okay.
No, I am. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yes.
Hi, I'm a first-year business student here, and I was just wondering briefly if you could describe your experience working as a general manager, especially being a player, transition to the business side.
Yes.
What that was like.
That he's referring to late 2010, early 2011. I was playing on the Freedom, and then when I had my concussion, I retired. But then I became the general manager for the Freedom that next season, and the Freedom subsequently moved down to Florida. It was very interesting to be on the other side of things. So then I knew all the numbers and what it took to have a team and to, get fields and trainers and doctors and logistics and flights and all this other stuff. And it's so much stuff to deal with on that end. And I honestly can say that I very much preferred just being a player. And just having to worry about getting the ball, and that was it. That was the only thing I concerned myself with, which was everything internally. But when I became management, it was everything external that I had to worry about. And so it gave me a greater appreciation for people who are on that side of it. But the good thing that it gave me was I understood the player, because I had been one. And so I think I did my general manager job as more of a player advocate. And I think that in the long run, that kind of attitude is what gets a team, where it wants to go. So
thank you.
You're welcome. Hi.
Hi. I'm Abby. I'm a student at Georgetown Visitation, and I'm a goalie as well.
Cool.
I know you talked about embracing your mistakes and learning from them. Mm-hmm. And I myself, as a goalie, I'm very hard on myself, mm-hmm. and it's really hard for me to move on, especially in those situations where you're scored on and feel you could have saved that shot. Yes. That you feel like that's your fault. And I was wondering, I know that goalies, they should work on bouncing back fast, so you have to motivate your team and encourage them. Mm-hmm. So you can't be down on yourself when you need to encourage your teammates to not be down on themselves, right, and try to get that goal back. And so I was wondering, in the situation, right in the moment after you should have had that ball, if you tell yourself something or do something to kind of shake it off or get back and motivated and.
Great question. I have the exact answer for you. Okay, so between the time the goal is scored and before the kickoff after that goal, that's the time you have to be crazy about what just happened. But as soon as that kickoff occurs, you take that, you put it on the shelf, and you deal with it later, after the game. Because if you carry that forward, the odds are going to get scored on again and again and again. You can't let that negative past infect the current and the future of that game. And that was one of my greatest gifts that I learned from sports psychologists, actually. She used to call it shelf it. No matter what happens, if something bad happens, you put it on the shelf and you deal with it later. And the time you have to have a fit about it is between the time it happens and the next whistle. So that might help you. And then in your mind, you're thinking, it's going to be more difficult for them to score on me now because now I'm angry, right? So then it's harder to score 2 goals on you, and then harder for 3. And then before you know it, you'll be having a lot of shutouts and 1-goal games. But the shelving it is very important.
Okay, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome, hon. Good luck.
All right. So thank you very much for all the good questions, and thanks, Briana, for being here. It was really fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.